right, you can start your meeting now.
All right, the Wednesday, June 22nd, 2022 HUD's committee meeting will come to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Davis,
Present.
Alderman Cone, Vice Chair Coder,
Here.
Alderwoman Boyd,
Here.
Alderman Ryan,
Here.
Alderwoman Evans.
Present.
5 present, you have quorum.
All right, thank you, Madam Clerk. First order of business, approval of the minutes of the June 9th, 2022 HUD's committee meeting. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I motion to approve the minutes for, what's the date?
June 9th.
June 9th, 2022.
Second.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 27th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 4th, that we approve the minutes of the June 9th, 2022 HUD's committee meeting. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Davis,
Aye.
Alderman Cone, Vice Chair Coder,
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd,
Aye.
Alderman Ryan,
Aye.
Alderwoman Evans.
Aye.
5 aye votes.
All right, by your motion, you sustained, by your vote, we sustained the motion of the Alderman from the 27th and approved the minutes. All right, moving on. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Jack Coder. I'm the vice chair of the HUD's committee. Alderwoman Davis is the new chairwoman of HUD's after the committee reshuffle that's taken place due to a number of vacancies. She's asked me to chair today's meeting. So I think as an order of business, first is take up resolution 19, of which I guess I'm now the primary sponsor. And then we'll get through that, and then we'll move on to our presentation from the mayor's office and various officials on sort of our progress report on ARPA funding. So let's start with resolution 19. I'm the sponsor, so I'll give some introductory remarks first. I think we all know this project was in front of HUD's, probably a month or so ago. It passed out of the committee and went in front of the full board, and then was, sort of mired in some controversy over the former alderman of the 22nd and his resignation. So given the importance of this project, I've been in communication with Mr. Richardson at the Development Corp. And representatives of the owners of the company looking to take over this site. It's a lot of good jobs at a site, a closed down industrial site in North City. It's an important project. I know we are part of a sort of a national effort to attract and retain these jobs in Missouri. So this is critically important to get this done and over the finish line. And the last thing we wanted was any appearance of impropriety or anyone questioning the need for the incentive on this project. So we thought it would be best to bring it back to committee, have a discussion, have another presentation, and then see where that leads us. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to, first and foremost, Neil Richardson, the director of SLDC. I know he wants to talk a little bit about the process and how this came about. And then I think we'll hear from Mr. Rasmussen and his clients, the company involved in this project. And then I will take questions. So Mr. Richardson, it's all yours.
Thank you, Vice Chair Coder. Congratulations, Alderwoman Davis, for taking over this very critical position of chairing the Housing, Urban Development, and Zoning Committee. This committee is a very important partner to SLDC as we continue to move forward economic development projects that aligns with the community needs that are needed in order to grow the city's tax base as well as our population, and bringing forth the necessary jobs to help create economic mobility in our city and in our region. This project that's being brought forth today, I believe is critically important and meets all of our key priorities around economic justice, as it's a key development project happening in North St. Louis City. It brings 75 jobs of average wages of $54,000. These jobs will be made available to middle skill, low skill workers, including SLPS students, working very closely with the St. Louis Agency for Training and Employment, and bringing manufacturing jobs back to the city, in North St. Louis City specifically. The ABB facility is located off of Interstate 70 in Union. It's very critical for us to revitalize that industrial area, that industrial zone for the growth of our city. Activating this site will not only attract and retain this specific owner, but also be able to bring forth other projects in our city as we create a manufacturing hub, a distribution center within the I-70 corridor that is a key driver and value add and a differentiator for the city of St. Louis as we're having conversations with major manufacturers and distributors across the country. One of the great things about St. Louis is the major highways and interstates that we have, and having facilities such as ABB driving that forward and being activated, that is a national story. And as we talk about the need for incentives, this project, but for the incentives, is not happening in St. Louis. This project this owner was looking across the country. They did a nationwide search. And because we were able to put together an incentive package, but also a package in which we were able to bring forth community benefits, it was attractive to them. And so this project stands on its merit of adding community benefits and meets the but-for test and allows us to activate a site that will bring forth 75 new jobs into the city of St. Louis and North St. Louis City, again, starting with wages around $54,000 per year. And so I would like to pass it over to my colleague, Zach Wilson, who will provide an overview of the incentive analysis that was conducted to show that this does meet the but-for test and adds significant value, not just to the city's growth, but also to our public schools and others long-term. So this is a long-term investment that we're making in order to create jobs for our youth and also to bring forth revenue for our taxing districts long-term. So I'll pass it over to Zach for the presentation, and then we'll pass it over to Doug Rasmussen.
Thank you, Neil. Just want to echo what Neil has mentioned. We've been working on this deal for about 8 months. It's been a very competitive process. We've competed against other locations across the country. And we're excited about a project that brings high paying or decent paying jobs to North City, to a building that's been vacant for a while. The project scores 3.5 out of 5. The only reason it scores that rate is because it's a giant warehouse and the models is established for per job per square foot. And since this is a massive warehouse, that's why it scores like that. So it scores high for the type of uses we're working on here. So again, but we've been working on this for 8 months. We do many of these projects that are competitive across the country. You only see the ones we get across the finish line. And this one is the one getting across the finish lines here, hopefully. But the other ones we don't, you don't see. We are constantly working on those projects day by day. So we're all very excited about this project. I'd like to introduce Doug Rasmussen with Steadfast City. He can tell you more about the project.
Before we go over to Doug, Zach, just real quick, this is a 10-year abatement at what percentage?
At 95%.
Okay, that's what I thought. 10 years at 95%. Thank you, Zach. Doug, floor is yours.
Thank you. Thanks, Zach. Thank you, Alderman Coder, and thanks to the committee here. Appreciate the opportunity to come back and present to you. So just by way of quick background, I'm Doug Rasmussen. My firm is Steadfast City Economic and Community Partners. We are a community and economic development consulting firm that's actually headquartered in St. Louis. So we have seven employees in the city in the 20th Ward at Jefferson and Cherokee. And then some of my colleagues here who work with our team here, Evan Glantz is here in our St. Louis office, and then Margaret Ryder and Shayla Meehan actually work for us out of Rochester, New York. So we have 5 employees in New York State and 2 in the state of Ohio. I'm also a city resident, so I've lived in the 3rd Ward in Old North St. Louis for 18 years, and then prior to that was in South St. Louis. So I'm happy to be here. I thought what I would do is actually just present a PowerPoint deck to kind of just roll through about 10 or 15 slides here and talk about the project. Our firm does a fair amount of incentive and site selection work for real estate developers and businesses. In addition to our planning and nonprofit consulting work that we do both here in town and outside of the St. Louis area. But as Zach had mentioned, we have been working on this project for actually they hired our client hired us to do this about a year ago. So we have been at it for a while, and obviously with kind of being the potential to bring this to the city of St. Louis and to the north side of the city of St. Louis, I think just makes it extra special. So with that, I'll share my screen, and then obviously please stop me at any time, and then we'll certainly take questions at the end as well. All right, is that something that everybody can see?
Yes.
Okay. All right, great. So this is, we usually code name these projects. We call this project Project 30. The entity that owns the building, I should talk a little bit about that, is an entity called Zelk Creek Properties LLC. And that is Project 30's landlord. Mark Cusimano is the landlord and owner of the building. He bought the building late last year. So Mark is Zelk Creek, and then the major tenant, which would be 200,000 feet, is this company Terramac, which is actually has a local connection here as well. So I'll get into that here in a minute. So Project 30 was the name of the code name of the project. And let's see here. What Terramac does is the picture here on the slide you see are these large earth movers and crawlers. So this is a assembly and manufacturing facility for these earth moving vehicles, and those are used in a variety of different applications. With utility companies, construction sites, various applications. But that's a picture of the Terramac product. The holding company, the ownership company that owns Terramac, is a company called CK Power. I'll talk to you a little bit about them here in a minute, but this all began because actually on January 1 of 2021, CK Power bought Terramac. Terramac is headquartered in Elburn, Illinois, which is north central Illinois. It's kind of a suburb of Chicago. As I mentioned, our firm was hired to help them analyze the best location to site Terramac's first North American manufacturing facility. So in the summer of 2021, we were hired to do that by CK Power and Terramac. CK Power and Terramac, really the business driver behind this is they were looking for some vertical integration and really a company-owned site to control their supply chain, decrease costs, and then really build out and expand this business. And so the overall site criteria that they had to start with was to look at a 5-hour radius from Elburn, Illinois. So with that, we do a lot of work, what we call desktop work, which basically just means we're getting on different economic developers' websites. We're studying labor rates. We're studying tax structures, real estate, kind of looking at a high level at economic development factors that go into that. And so with that, we had a fairly wide catchment area. 5 hours of Elburn. The thought there was, clients would go to Terramac's headquarters, which is going to stay in Elburn. And then the ability to sort of drive to, the company's production site for their customers. So again, looked at the workforce characteristics, the wages, real estate, looked at the incentives. The other thing that was important was our client has relationships throughout the Midwest through their current business, especially in two of the states that we looked at and actually got shortlisted in Iowa and Indiana. So that was a consideration as well. And then you can see from the slide here that originally we considered a variety of states, and then we got really focused in Iowa and Indiana, and then sort of a little bit later in the game even we're made aware of the possibility of locating in the ABB building and really having an impact here, and so that became of interest as well. And then we started to work with Zach and his team and Neil's team over at SLDC in November. So that's the high level on kind of what started this. A little bit more about Terramac. So again, this is the only US-based North American manufacturer of these rubber track crawler carriers. And you can kind of see, on this slide, just some of the things that I've mentioned this already, what these are used for, and some of the services and things that are provided, and then the different product models that are there. A little bit about CK Power. So CK Power is actually a business that's got almost 400 employees in 11 locations. They themselves have 3 assembly and manufacturing facilities, and it's a family-owned and operated business that's been in business for over 90 years. And they have an office in Creve Coeur, Missouri. So a little bit about them as well, some of the market segments that they're in, and some of the things that they're doing around with engines and with these generators and things that you can see that are pictured here on the slide. The overall opportunity, as this project comes online, is there will be about a $3.1 million capital investment, and then of that, about $2.2 million in tenant improvements. And as Zach mentioned, there's 75 new jobs and 54,000 a year average wage. They would occupy 200,000 feet of the building, and then there actually is about another 95 to 100,000 feet of industrial space that the plan would be for FW warehousing and other distribution and logistics related entities could potentially occupy the rest of the space, but the space will also be marketed for additional manufacturing. There's the breakout of the different jobs there. You can see there's a good distribution, but a lot of assembler jobs, helper jobs that we think are we look forward to working with Slade and others to help fill. So as we did our analysis, we really ended up focusing and traveling to 2 out-of-state locations that we felt were very attractive. One was in the Dubuque, Iowa area. So this is a site that we looked at in suburban Dubuque called Dyersville. Dyersville is where the Field of Dreams is, by the way, for you baseball fans. So anyway, it was a nice property. They have a 15-year TIF at 80%, and that was something that we liked a lot and made the very short list. The other one that really came into focus for us was a suburban Indianapolis property in a town called Mooresville. We actually looked in multiple sites and buildings in the state of Indiana on one day. However, this one rose to the top. This community actually had constructed its own speculative industrial building, which is pictured here, and had very attractive lease terms and economic incentives for tax abatement and other state and local programs. And then this is the ABB building. So as Zach had mentioned, it's a large site. I believe the entire site is 26 acres, and there's a large, several buildings on this property. Our building would be the one kind of that's pictured in sort of the back right. That's the primary location of this operation, and I think there's a closer up picture of that here at the bottom right side of the slide, and then some of the crane and floor space that's in there. So this is an attractive location, because of interstate access, and then also, the building does have some nice finishes, as you can see from that picture there. So ABB, despite them closing the plant, did leave some of this plant in good shape. A little bit about the incentives analysis, so what we did is we went, and as we shortlisted these properties, we really worked with the state and local governments in each of these locations. And these are the present value of the different incentive packages that were offered or have been offered. You can see that the Dyersville was the top. We decided from a time to market point of view that our client really needed to get into a building quicker. So that one was kind of eliminated more just on timing, and then we started to really focus more on existing property. Mooresville, as I mentioned, has a very good incentive package there. But we wanted to work and see if we could try to make something happen here once we became aware of the ABB property. And so we've been working with SLDC, and I think we've got this package really put together in a way that doesn't obviously close the gap entirely, but we felt with the local tax abatement, that's a key piece to moving the project forward here. So that's really where we were when we originally presented on May 31st, and and happy to take any additional questions.
Thank you very much, Doug. Let's go through the committee and see who's got questions. Is Alderman Cohn here?
I am. I don't have.
Okay. Alderwoman Boyd.
Hello.
Shane, Alderman, you are there. Sorry, I didn't see you.
Sorry, I unmuted myself. I don't have any questions about the project. It seems like it's a pretty exciting and sound project. I'm familiar with the site. Can you maybe explain a little bit though about how St. Louis got into the mix with these other three cities? Is it just because you live here, or was there something else that was attractive about St. Louis?
Yeah,
and this site in particular.
Yeah, no, great question, Alderman. I appreciate that. So I think originally, we weren't really looking here at all. And I know that's not your specific question, but we had spent a fair amount of time actually, and I think of the three, we're very focused on Mooresville. But as we were in the Mooresville process, and we're really working, I think, to locate the plant there, the opportunity for this building becoming available, we learned of the a potential transfer of the ownership of the building to the current owner, and I think that plus the fact that we could work from the Steadfast perspective. We've done a lot of work in the city, obviously in this region, so we were able to get our client caught up pretty quickly, of course, and then with the great help of SLDC as well to put it in play. And I do think the one of the things that's attractive about this property is it is that one slide that I showed you that shows the manufacturing floor. So that is a that's got some good infrastructure that's in there. So that definitely was part of wanting to at least walk through the building.
Okay. And then Zach, just from an analysis perspective, why 10 years versus 5 years or 15? Can you give a little bit of background in terms of how the 10-year, I think 5%?
Yeah, initially we offered 5 years at 95, I believe, and 5 years at 75. And then they were able to obtain additional possible jobs for warehouse space too. So that's what increased it to 10 years at 95%. So the increase in jobs create the increase of abatement levels.
Is that based off of the Ferry spreadsheet model?
Yes, sir. Yes, it is. And
okay.
It's in the next few months, we'll be rolling out some changes here. As you will, there's been many focus groups in the last several months. That's mildly tweaked a little, but that's what we're using currently.
Okay, all right, thank you. Just wanted the additional background. I don't have any further.
Thank you, Alderman. I would be remiss, Chairwoman Davis, any questions?
At the moment, I don't. I'm going to wait till the end. Thank you.
Okay, circle back with you. Alderwoman Boyd.
I don't have any questions. I just have a comment, because I'm glad that I'm seeing things coming this way, coming in our communities. And so it's past due. We need to build up, because for so long we were always asked to wait. So I'm glad that we're moving forward on this. And I'm excited because I know that ABB building. And I always admired it because I always thought it was just so kept so nice. And it was just, I was like, this is a beautiful building. So thank you, Doug. I appreciate this project.
Thank you, Alderwoman. Alderman Narayan.
Thank you, Vice Chairman. Alderman Cohn asked basically all the questions that I had. I do want to thank everyone for going back over this, because I know that both members of the board and the general public had some concerns given the recent craziness at the board. So I'm glad that we did take the time to go back and shed some more light on this and make sure that we're moving forward in a prudent manner. So thank you all.
Thank you, Alderman. Alderwoman Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have any questions at this time. I'm just thankful for the development that's going to take place in our city. And the reason I'm saying that is because I'm in New York City as we speak. I know where Margaret Ryder, the vice president, I know where Rochester, New York is. So I'm in New York, guys, but I'm still here for the Zoom meeting. And I'm just glad to see the development take place at this time.
Thank you, Alderwoman. Chairwoman Davis.
Thank you, sir. One of the questions that haven't been asked, and we need to go ahead and just put it out there. So give us some background information. I think I would like to have that answered by you, Doug, as well as Neil Richardson. To what extent did the alderman have any involvement in this? Because I do know on projects like this, it's very little involvement that we normally have because all of the expertise that has to be handled there. And well, we need to put that question out there and have it answered. Go right ahead.
Alderwoman, just to be clear, or Chairwoman, to be clear, you're talking about the former alderman of the 22nd.
Thank you for clarity. Thank you.
Thanks. Mr. Richardson, if you want to handle that first.
Yeah, I can. And then I'll also pass it over to Zach as well. But as you know, Alderwoman Davis and members of the committee, typically SLDC would handle all of the analysis, work with the developer or the owner or the business in this case, to really find the sweet spot in which we're able to provide an incentive that makes the project financially feasible, but also add significant benefit to the community at large without giving up or sacrificing more than what's required in order to make this deal happen. Knowing that it was within the ward represented by former Alderman Jeffrey Boyd, we did contact him and let him know that this project was happening within his ward, and for him to understand that this was what we're aiming to accomplish, and then make sure that he had contact with the business owner so that he'll know what business is coming. So as questions will come up from his constituents that he was there to represent, he can adequately respond with enough information to help them feel comfortable about the project, let them know that the business was reputable, that the incentive that was being provided was adequate enough to be able to support attracting this national business, this national brand to the ward, and how beneficial it would be. So that was the extent of the conversations that SLDC had with former Alderman Boyd. I don't know if Zach, you want to provide any additional information, but the analysis that we provided to Alderman Boyd was done in the same way that was provided to the full board, just the overall financial incentive model and the number of jobs that was being created.
Yeah, that's based on these type of projects. We had to stay pretty quiet. We can't share too much information with outside public until later on. So when we know the project's legit and the company is serious about considering St. Louis, then we score it. Then we reach out to the alderperson of the ward and see if they're favorable to the type of use and are comfortable moving forward. So it's later on in the process, and that's basically how it's been done on these type of site selection incentives.
Doug, did you have anything else to add?
Yeah, I would just echo what Neil and Zach said. I mean, we've done a lot of, economic development incentive work in the city, both when the 3 years this firm has been around, and then prior to that when I was at Duff and Phelps. And, we're always working hand in glove, with this analysis with St. Louis Development Corporation, and then, follow their lead on those things. And so, as Zach mentioned, the kind of once that's all vetted, we typically will have, a conversation with the alderman, and that's really what it was. So.
Okay, for me, my last question, it will be, when we talk about community benefit, what has been discussed as far as your community partnership with this business being located in that area? Because I don't know that area that well. Is there a business association? Is there a strong neighborhood association? I'm not sure about those kind of things.
Yep. Well, I guess I can mention what we've talked about in the past under, the former alderman, but I think, our goal is to, provide whatever, work with Neil and his team on community benefits. So I think in the past we're in the early stages of talking about possible, community benefit partnership between the landlord and a group called Hamilton Heights Neighborhood Association. So we don't have an agreement or anything like that, but the Zelk Properties is, we were in the early stage of, working on that. So.
Well, that's good to hear that the neighborhood association is aware of the project. That's critical, I think. And as you move forward, working with the neighborhood is really important, because you all are going to be partners. They're going to be your caretakers for your business, because they're there 24 hours a day. So that's great to hear that.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, I'm a North Side resident as well. So I think just, even though I'm not near this plan, I think there's a lot of even people I know in my neighborhood and church and stuff that might be interested in it. So I think it's great.
Yeah.
Okay.
One of the other areas that we've discussed is creating and expanding the partnership with Slate and SLPS in order to create those job opportunities too. So that's part of the community benefit that we're working through with this.
Exciting.
Yeah.
Okay. Those are kind of the things that need to happen always. And so I appreciate all of that. That's it for me for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have any questions. I just want to thank Director Richardson and Mr. Wilson and Mr. Rasmussen for pulling this together and coming back in front of the committee, and to, of course, Teramac and CK Power for giving St. Louis a shot and making this investment in a very prominent building. I mean, a building many of us drive by all the time. I know it's got sort of a rocky history, but it's a very prominent building with, right off the highway. We see it all the time, and I'm glad it's going to be coming back to life with 75 good paying jobs. If there's no further questions from members of the committee, I'll entertain a motion on Resolution 19.
I make a motion to accept resolution 19.
Second,
been
adopt
moved.
resolution 19.
That's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 27th, seconded by the Alderman. Was that from the 25th?
Correct.
Okay, seconded by the Alderman from the 25th that we adopt resolution 19. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Davis,
Aye.
Alderman Cone,
Aye.
Vice Chair Coder,
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd,
Aye.
Alderman Ryan,
Aye.
Alderwoman Evans,
Aye.
6 aye votes.
By your vote, you sustained the motion and adopted resolution 19. Thank you, everybody who attended for resolution 19 today. I'm glad we're moving this forward.
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you, everybody, for your support. We appreciate it. Have a great day.
thanks, Doug.
Yep.
Okay, moving on. Doug, will you unshare your screen? Thank you. All right. Okay, next we've got a presentation by the mayor's office on what sort of where we're at with ARPA funding. I will defer. I don't know who wants to kick us off from the mayor's office. I see Chief of Staff Jared Boyd is here. Mr. Boyd, you want to get us started?
Sure. Thank you, Alderman Coder. And again, thank you, Alderwoman Davis. I echo Director Richardson's statement and thank you for taking the charge with respect to the HUD's committee and all the important matters that come before this body. Thank you, Alder members and members of the committee and the public. Today, we're here to talk about two things. One, give a status report as to where we are with respect to ARPA expenditures that have been authorized. And two, go through the survey and engagement results for the second tranche of ARPA. So with me today, I have members of my office, Noel Pfeffer and Grace Kyung, and Rich Bradley from BPS to also give an update on some of the infrastructure issues that have been authorized through ARPA thus far. So if we go to the timeline, just very briefly, we received ARPA in two tranches, one last year, one in June of this year, have gone and appropriated, or with you all have appropriated the first tranche of ARPA in 3 different board bills. First in August of last year, subsequently appropriated additional funds in May of this year. And as I stated before, received the second tranche of ARPA from the federal government earlier this month. So going on to the next slide, the first ARPA package, as I stated, was passed in August of last year, consisted primarily of direct relief spending, including spending for rental assistance, medical and health assistance. And we can go to the next slide. And that is codified in Ordinance 71393. Thus far, with respect to that particular appropriation, almost $90 million of that appropriation has been programmed. And when we talk about program funds, those are funds that we have entered into contracts and have plans on spending those funds. And we have done that through about 50 different contracts. And later in the presentation, we'll go through the large departments that are responsible for that spending so that you all can get a closer look at how those expenditures are tracking and how they're being spent. And in terms of the money that's actually been spent, there's about $13 million according to the ledger on the comptroller's office. I will note that that number is a little bit low in the sense that the comptroller's office has had to close the ledger to change to a new accounting system. So there are some expenditures that we know of that are not a part of that number, but going through the programmed funds will kind of help us tease some of those expenditures out as well. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Grace Young in our office to talk about the Department of Health and their ARPA funds that they're responsible for.
Mr. Boyd, before you go forward, I think what we'll do, I want to just in each section so there's a lot of information. I want to give the committee members a chance to, ask questions. So I'll just run through and see if anyone has any top level questions based off of what Mr. Boyd presented, and then we'll move on to Grace. Is that all right?
That sounds good.
Okay. Alderwoman Davis, Chairwoman Davis.
I have no questions. Thank you.
Okay. Alderman Cohn.
No
All right.
questions.
All right. Alderwoman Boyd.
So help me understand. So you said that these dollars have been appropriated in these departments, and so they've already been distributed. I'm kind of confused.
Sure. The distinction between a program fund and a fund and funds that have actually been expended. So program funds are funds where we've gone through a competitive RFP process and we've awarded a contract. So recently, and we'll go into this later in the presentation, with community violence intervention, we had a community involved RFP process that we went through and recently awarded contracts for several different entities to do community violence work. Now, because the majority of that work has not started, we don't have expenditures, but we have contracts that allow us to spend that money from now until the end of that contractual period. And it's also important to note that the ARPA funds can be spent through the end of 2026. So the distinction between program funds and expenditures is that we have contracts and plans to spend the program funds. Expenditures are funds that have actually already been spent and the vendor has already been paid for those funds. So there is somewhat of in the program funds, there are funds that we've actually spent. It's just that the comptroller's office hasn't provided that vendor with a check yet for that service.
Okay, that's totally confusing to me, and it's not making sense. And so,
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead. I'll try to catch up to figure this whole thing out. Okay, because I'm looking at the people that you have listed here,
Sure.
and so I'm just having some struggles because okay, go ahead. I'll just listen and take notes. Go ahead.
Okay.
I have no other questions. I'm sorry.
All right. Sorry. Alderman Narayan.
No questions. Thank
Alderman
you.
Narayan. Alderwoman Evans.
No questions.
Okay. My only question would be, I guess, so we've got about 50 contracts in place for those 80 to the program funds. How many more contracts do we anticipate, still, or how many are remaining? How many bids are still out there that we're waiting to pick a vendor for, I guess, the remainder of those, the difference between the 135 and the 100 or so million that's been spent or spent or programmed?
Sure. I think it probably will be best to kind of go through each department.
Okay.
To further kind of illuminate that kind of the contracts and the RFPs that are in process.
No, that's perfect. All right. That works for me. With that, let's turn it over to Grace.
Alrighty. Hi, everyone. Thanks, Alderman. Just for my clarification, Alderman, as I'm going through each of these line by line, is that what you would like then for a line by line update?
Yeah, give us some top level detail about each one, and then we can get more into the weeds with specific questions to the extent we have them.
Okay, that sounds great. Noel, can you go back just one more slide? So just want to give a high level overview of where we are with the Department of Health. This is only with Board Bill 2 as a reminder, the ordinance that Jared shared previously from last session. So the appropriated funds, we appropriated 15.75 to DOH. We so far have programmed, a different way you could say is obligated funds, about 8.2 million, and then we've expended about 2.6 million. So for the next slide, the first one would be canvassing community outreach. On this one, as a reminder, we have spent about 105,000 on COVID-19, partnering with radio ads, and then the remainder of the funds, it passed through ENA back in May for the People's Health Community Action Corp to do additional canvassing and community outreach. That has not started yet, but we're looking forward to getting a fully executed contract. We're just waiting for the remaining signatures needed. For community health workers, this is that DOH has been using it on a per performance basis. For behavioral health providers, we have been working on this, such as partnering with things like the, I believe, Cure Violence contract. Noel and Jared will correct me if I'm wrong there, but again, we had a contract until June of 2022. We've renewed and added 1 million, so that brings our total to 2.3 million on what we've programmed there. For community violence intervention programs, Jared briefly touched on this, that we had a really robust RFP process. We offered professional assistance. We ultimately selected 8 providers and most of those contracts were approved at the June ENA, and that totaled about 1.9 million. The contracts that were selected were Mission St. Louis, Freedom Community Center, Employment Connections, the T, Organization for Black Struggle, Urban League, and the Legal Services of Eastern Missouri. For youth-led programming, this was $1 million partnership with the St. Louis Mental Health Board. They've been doing youth pop-up events, and at these youth pop-up events, these are created by and led by youth in addressing gun violence. It's primarily targeted for youth ages 16 to 25. They just had their first event Juneteenth weekend, and they're scheduled to at least have 3 more in July. And that's a rolling application process that folks can apply to receive funding to host these pop-up events. The mobile vaccination clinics, we gave $500,000 in contract to Affinia Healthcare to help us with creating mobile sites, partnering at different areas to offer vaccines, as well as we just recently approved and awarded a bid that was about $399,000 for 1 mobile vaccine van. For vaccination education and marketing, we are working with the communications division. They have an interagency, or they have a interdepartmental agreement with them of $300,000 for COVID-19 communication services. The Department of Health is still evaluating for the remaining $200,000 how to best use that to get information out. And then the vaccination incentive program that has almost been all spent. We have so far distributed through the DOH sponsored clinics about 4,800 gift cards. And through partnering with the FQHCs, they're helping us get out 7,300 gift cards. So that is my very quick update on DOH.
Thank you, Grace. Let's go through, let's go through and see who's got questions on this section, and then we'll move on to the next department here. Alderman Cohn.
No questions.
Chairwoman Davis. Would you like to be first or last?
No, we're fine. Whatever you decide to do, I'm good.
Okay.
But I don't have any questions.
All right. Alderwoman Boyd.
Grace, could you tell me where the canvassing, you said that you all are doing canvassing community outreach. Where is that and when? What areas are you covering?
So, sorry, I just took a sip of water. That has not started yet. We are still waiting for the contract to be fully executed. It's getting the remaining signatures needed after it passed out at ENA. So I'll be working with DOH on how we prioritize most likely hotspot location areas that we know that we can do further engagement. So Alderwoman Boyd, if you have recommendations, and this of course goes to any of the aldermen on the call that can help guide DOH on it, I'm sure they would appreciate and welcome any feedback and how to reach hard to reach populations, individuals who may need this information the most.
I guess my struggle with this is because I hear all these great ideas, but I never see, and I've met with the mental health board and Will Pickard and talked about this. Nobody is connecting not only with the older people, but, and I can say me, I'm not gonna speak for everybody, but people in the community to see where these areas are that need to be addressed. And so people come up with these great ideas, and then when you look around and you say, well, how did they communicate or who they talking to know where the hot spots are? And I usually see the city going to the same areas, the same neighborhoods continuously. And so nobody is really getting out there on the street to find out where the issues are.
Okay.
And so I guess that's my concern. I'm just trying to figure out, and you said like the youth pop-up events, that's the same question. How are you all finding out where these events should be, or who are you targeting? Because I'm sorry, downtown is not the area where you should go to all the youth pop-up events. And so you have communities that need those events to be in there. And I don't see nobody from the city coming to say, how should we connect with these people to get these people involved? So it's just a little information. I just wish people would quit thinking for our community and ask our community what their needs are. And those little surveys is not it. If you got community outreach, people need to be on the ground talking to people to find out what the needs are. And they'll tell you, I guarantee you, they will let you know what the issues are in their communities and what they think is needed to help feel like they have hope in their community. And so right now, I don't see that. So that was my two questions. Thanks, Grace.
Of course. Jared, did you want to add anything before I responded?
Sure. Going to youth-led programming, those are small grants. They are specifically designed for community organizations to apply to the mental health board to support these small pop-up events, not just downtown, but all over the city. So those just got started, and we'll be happy to share that information with you so that organizations that are in your ward or that you know of can apply for those funds. Because when we talk about these type of events, you're right, it's not just about youth that come downtown, it's about helping do these type of events all over the region. So happy to, like I said, pass that information along to smaller and grassroots organizations.
I'm sorry, Alderwoman.
So my question is, how are you all marketing this? And no offense to the Urban Leagues, Better Family Lives, Mission St. Louis, no offense to those, but you have, as people used to call like the mom and pop stores, you had the mom and pop organizations, and you have organizations that's doing the work and don't have the dollars. And so how are you marketing this for people to know what's out there? Because I don't see that. Everybody's always saying, and I say this generation is the microwave generation, because you all are fast and quick. Put it on the internet and everybody can get it. Well, I hate to tell you, but everybody's not sitting in front of a computer all day. And so how are we getting this information out to these communities? And like I said, for these communities to feel like it's some hope for them to have something to look forward to.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful feedback. I know that the Juneteenth event that I had mentioned previously, that was in the Academy neighborhood. For the next 3 that are scheduled, I do not know yet where those events are. So I'll be sure to ask Kevin Bailey to share that with the Board of Aldermen once that is confirmed. And I will also follow up with the Mental Health Board and what type of word of mouth efforts that are happening more on the ground that isn't digital, to ensure that the youth pop-up events and folks knowing that these are small grant programs that youth can apply to the host of events, that it's reaching communities. So we'll follow up with an answer on that as well as after we check in with the mental health board. For canvassing and community outreach, I will also follow up with DOH on that as well, and how we're working with aldermen and different neighborhood associations to ensure that these canvassing efforts are really reaching folks on the ground, and that we are doing this in partnership with all of you all as well, since you all know the best way to reach your neighborhoods and the constituents that may not be aware of all these digital options of how this information is being shared. So we'll be sure to follow up with you, Alderman Boyd, but is there anything specifically that Jared and I can help answer now as well?
So I guess my question, you have a pop-up event. So what's the result are you trying to accomplish? Are we looking at mental health? We looking at gun safety? We looking at, I mean, what are we looking at to accomplish to get these youth engaged?
From my understanding, the goal for these programs is to increase access to safe spaces, bring in activities designed by youth for youth. And so helping curb, one, the gun violence, any public safety issues, but also giving youth an opportunity to help lead and design things that they can do within their own communities as well. But if the mental health board has more specific outcomes they're striving for, I will also follow up with them and asking if they can share that as well.
Okay, thank you, Grace. Thank you, Jared. No more questions.
Thank you, Alderman.
Vice Chair. I was like, who are you? Vice, oh, who are you?
I ask myself that every day. Who am I? Alderman Narayan.
No questions. Thank you.
Alderwoman Evans.
Yes, Mr. Vice Chair and Chair. I'd like to know, of the community violence intervention programs, what's being implemented on the north side and, you know, in the Fourth Ward? Are there listings of what's being presented in these particular areas?
Thank you, Alderwoman, for that question. Jared, I have not been working as closely with Sarah and Will on that. Do you have a better answer you can give Alderwoman Evans other than I will follow up with her?
Trying to pull the information up, but the majority of the proposals do have neighborhoods that cover North St. Louis, and I will follow up and figure out which ones are in the Fourth Ward. The proposals also are touching different topics. So there is an entity that is looking at domestic violence. There are other kind of niche kind of community violence intervention proposals. So there were several proposals, and if you come back to me, I'll see if I can pull that information up. But each proposal had both unique neighborhoods and kind of specific kind of groups that they were trying to reach.
Okay, and you do have a listing of those neighborhoods, right?
Yes.
Okay. I would like to see that listing, those listings if possible. Thank you. I see a hand up. I'm sorry. That's all the questions that I have.
Thank you, Alderwoman. Okay, Mr. Boyd, turn it over to you for whoever's next from your side.
Grace, I think you are
I
continuing.
am next, but I see Alderwoman Davis put up a hand.
Oh, sorry, Chairwoman Davis.
I just wanted to add to help a little bit with how we know what is going on. So on our website, under every department, it is listed what services they're providing and where those funds came from. So ARPA funds are identified, Community Development Agency funds are identified, and neighborhood organizations and/or programming are identified as well. in the briefing that we get sent, and I want to say her name is Donna, that sends it from, I think, SLDC. Every week she sends us a list of events and has all the information for what community it's in, the name of the organization, and the intent of the event. And then we also get a list from the various vendors. So the various vendors also sent to all the aldermen, because I see it, all of our names are on it. And they advertise to us what it is that they're providing. And I know it's a lot, it's an awful lot to try to keep up with. So you're not going to have it all in one place. And that could become at least two people's full-time jobs to pull that together to create a comprehensive list. But one thing I did notice at all my neighborhood meetings last week, everybody was sharing all of the same information about those types of things. And I learned about the ones in the 4th Ward at my JVL meeting. It's just going to be difficult, but as we're getting there and we got a long way to go, I think we're going to get even more comprehensive in providing that for us. And it won't just be on the website. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderwoman. Okay, Grace, go ahead, you can continue.
So for DHS, quick overview, appropriated for 43 million. As of a couple days ago, the program funds are 34.7 million, and there has been expenditures of about 8.3 million. Next slide. So as a reminder, for the rental and utility assistance, otherwise known as ERA, that was a separate pot of funding. So that's not under most of the funding we talk about under state, local fiscal relief of the 249 million. So we, for ERA through the Treasury Department, as a reminder, we got 12.44 million. And the city and the county, we released a joint RFP. They selected a third-party administrator, Live Stories, for a centralized regional assistance portal that is easier for folks to navigate to apply in one place. And as of this week, the total funds distributed are 2.4 million. The average processing time is 17 days. The median rent paid is about $2,900, and the median utilities paid is $383. And then the total number of households served are 590. And they also have a live dashboard link that the slides were shared, so you all could click there. And then if anyone has any further information, please let us know on that. And so next slide. And then we'll jump more into the state local fiscal relief. So for emergency shelters, as you all are aware, because we've shared it in the past, most of the funding there has been programmed to several different contracting agencies, whether that was amending contracts, new contracts, and potential future projects. For the call hotline and centralized intake, DHS is still currently under contract review and negotiations with the approved vendor. For wraparound services, all 8 of those, I believe those 8 contracts are approved and fully executed, are in operation and have started. For intentional encampments, that's been a bit, or safe outdoor spaces, that's been a bit on pause with the location that the vendor had initially selected, also being one of the locations that under Board Bill 2, we weren't able to spend this funding. For Safe Haven, that was recently reissued and the RFP process did close, and the PSA committee reviewed it on June 14th. So they are reaching out to the vendor that was approved to begin talking about scope of work, contract negotiations, including the budget. For bridge housing, that 1.5 million had already been approved between 3 different vendors for DHS to enter into contract review and negotiations for rapid rehousing. That 3 million as well, most of that is currently, similarly to bridge housing, moving through contract review to contract execution, and similarly also for permit support supportive housing. Happy to jump into a bit more detail in terms of vendors, amounts of funding on any of those if anyone has questions. But the next slide goes into the other pockets of the funding for DHS. So the first one is mortgage assistance. There are 3 vendors that the contracts are moving forward and it's fully executed, but we're in the process of program design there for the program guidelines in order to launch the program. On a side note, as a reminder, the state has their SAFER program that includes mortgage assistance. And I was looking at the dashboard before this meeting. We currently see through the state, 10 million of the $100 million has been spent. And that means about 1,000 approved applications, but there is a stark difference between St. Louis County and St. Louis City. St. Louis County has seen approved applications of about 400 that total about 3.4 million in assistance, but the city has only seen 8 awards in a total of $86,000 in assistance. So I'll follow up with DHS on the best way we have that conversation with the state. For real estate personal property tax relief, this has been a successful initiative in partnering with the Collector of Revenue's office, Park Central, and Legal Services on their RETAF program. And we've been able to, in the last tax sale, be able to help 12 families, and we'll be helping more families in the next tax sale. For accounting and legal compliance, this is personnel, case management, and program operation. I believe that is also split between personnel and then direct support care workers and senior services. That had an RFP that went out. It closed on May 24th, and I know DHS is finalizing the review and scoring of those applications to call a PSA committee together to select the vendors. And I believe that is all the DHS programs. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Noel. So the last one here is targeted cash assistance. So the $500 direct release payments, we approximately have 9,000 payments distributed to date. The strategy for the remaining gift cards are to target our outreach to ensure the gaps are being filled to reach people with the highest needs. So we've been focusing outreach with seniors, unhoused individuals, and families with children on free and reduced lunch. All righty, Alderman.
Okay, thank you. Grace, is that your last section?
For now, for DHS, then we're moving on to the other departments.
Yeah, got you. I mean, are you doing CDA or someone else?
Noel is.
Okay, I'll just quickly run through and see if anyone has any questions about these, about this part. I know Alderman Cohn had to jump. Alderwoman Boyd. Okay, Alderman Narayan.
No questions. Thank you.
Alderwoman Evans.
No questions. Thank you.
Chairwoman Davis.
For me, it's not a question, it's a statement. When we say we've only had contact with 12 individuals, that is appalling for the city of St. Louis, and most especially the level of need that we know is out there. And so we will have to find several more ways to get the information out. Now, this past weekend, I visited 11 churches, 3 dedicated senior living buildings, and 2 events that were neighborhood designed. And if any information had been available, now I did a lot of word of mouth because I know where to send people to get help, but we got to do a better job. We got too many people, especially seniors, who have chosen to remain in their homes, and they're behind in taxes. They can't pay their utility bills and a number of other things. And also, we've had too many people evicted this year, most especially, and the information is not getting out there. So again, when we talked about the multiple ways we need to get the information out, it has got to move faster and it has to be more thorough, because we just cannot allow people to suffer and we have money available to help them. And so I just appreciate any additional methods that we come up with. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderwoman. Okay, let's keep going. Mr. Boyd, whoever's next, or I guess it's Mr. Pfeffer.
I'll jump in here to discuss the city's development agencies, but I'll also offer a quick comment on Alderwoman Davis's call to action, which is to say, first off, yes, and we'll be talking a little bit later in this presentation about some of the efforts we're making to reach out and make contact with more individuals, but also to clarify that the dozen individuals served with the Real Estate Tax Assistance Fund, it's a very narrow program focused on folks who are about to lose their homes. So that was actually the full population of individuals who are eligible at that tax sale. And we will be serving more in upcoming tax sales. But to your broader point about the huge need with respect to property tax relief, agreed, and we are looking, and we'll discuss shortly as we discuss home repair efforts we're making to attach property tax relief to the home repair program and thereby serve a broader population there as well. So agreed on all fronts. With respect to the city's development agencies, I'll be covering 5 entities here: the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, CDA, SLDC, SLATE, and PDA. Do you want to pause for questions at each, or perhaps at the end of all 5?
No, we'll just go through. We'll go ahead through, and then we'll do questions at the end.
That sounds like a plan. So $60 million roughly have been appropriated to the city's development agencies. $41 million have been programmed, and $1.5 million have been spent. And we'll dive into those details now. But I'll also take this opportunity to perhaps clarify. Alderwoman Boyd, I couldn't agree more that these distinctions that we use here are confusing. The way I think about it, if it's helpful, is that appropriated funds are funds that have been authorized by the legislature, by you all, for the city to spend. Programmed funds are funds that the executive branch has entered into contractual obligations to spend. So when you appropriate money, we can spend it, but we don't have to, right? When we program the money, we are obligated to spend it because we have a contractual obligation. And then that expenditure is when that money literally leaves city coffers, leaves city accounts. And as Jared noted, there are some confusing wrinkles with that as a result of our transition over to the ERP system. I hope that was helpful. With respect to the Affordable Housing Commission, almost all of these funds have moved. And in fact, half of the funds allocated to legal assistance, to mediation, to community-driven food production, and to community outreach have left city coffers. They are in the hands of the Legal Services of Eastern Missouri, of the Equal Housing Opportunity Council, EHOC, of the Conflict Resolution Center that is offering mediation services and has in fact already spent down its initial allocation of $225,000 and will be receiving another transfer soon. For community-driven food production, $400,000 was awarded to the Urban League, of which $200,000 has been transferred. And then the remaining $600,000, we've been in deep conversations with other players in this ecosystem, with BJC, with MFH and others to understand what the real gaps are when we talk about investing in urban agriculture and in distribution mechanisms. With respect to tiny homes, $1 million was awarded to the Veterans Community Project to build 50 tiny homes. And I know Alderwoman Davis has been deeply involved in that project. And then another $1 million has been set aside for Jefferson Spaces. With respect to community outreach, 120, the full, see, here's an example of the difference. $250,000 has been programmed to St. Patrick's Center. We have a contract with St. Patrick's Center, which obligates us to fund them for $250,000, but only $125,000 of that has been transferred to St. Patrick's Center and has actually left the city's coffers. But they are doing street outreach with those funds. And then finally, with public benefits navigators, the original intent of this appropriation was to supplement the rental assistance monies in order to ensure that we were reaching the people who needed rental assistance most. We've actually been really impressed with GECO's commitment to serving and assisting and reaching marginalized communities. So we're now actually thinking about how we can repurpose these funds towards other other important priorities, such as helping people access Medicare benefits, helping individuals file for the child tax credit, as well as helping individuals navigate other public benefits such as the home repair program and others. So what we're planning to do here is issue an RFP that isn't overly prescriptive, it's not overly narrow, but invites community organizations to offer us ideas. Here's a program that we think people aren't reaching. For example, we talk about the need to do more in order to reach individuals with, for example, property tax assistance. We would love to have someone apply to us to say, hey, here's a program, give me $50,000, $100,000, and I can conduct outreach with this plan to this marginalized community to access this program. So would love everyone's ideas here, and we will flag for you all when this RFP goes out. But every other item in the Affordable Housing Commission is moving. With respect to the Community Development Administration, the full $1 million of food assistance has been programmed in 7 contracts that have gone through E&A. Those specific organizations, I'm happy to provide, if I can just pull them up very quickly, which is to say, excuse me. Let me move on to the next one and come back to that one while I pull this one up. But with respect to Gateway Go, we have awarded in partnership with Bi-State over 500 free transit passes and expect to award a full 1,000 by the time the summer is out. And that full 250,000 has been expended, transferred to Bi-State. On food assistance, those 7 entities that we are working with are City Seniors Incorporated, Cote Briant Presbyterian Housing Corporation, Food Outreach, Mission St. Louis, Northside Youth and Senior Service Center, Operation Food Search, and the People's Community Action Corporation. We still remain in active conversations with the public library regarding the highest and best use of these digital literacy funds and how they fit into a broader digital equity strategy, which I'll discuss when I touch on ITSA and BPS down the line. And then on early childhood education and childcare, happy to report that subrecipient agreement has been signed by CDA and the Mental Health Board. And the timeline for disbursement of those funds is that the Mental Health Board is already conducting outreach to providers. We are going to put out the application likely in September. These are for grants of up to $49,500 for providers to cover tuition assistance. This will be going out in September, and we expect to disperse funds by the end of the year, if not hopefully sooner. And then finally, on the healthy home repair, I've discussed prior on these updates a variety of structural changes that we're making, abbreviating historic and environmental review, attaching or dispersing these funds through master bids instead of bidding out each home individually to increase the velocity with which we move these, attaching property tax forgiveness to this program, because we know over 13% of folks who are in our waiting list do have property tax liability, also exploring options for what we can do to alleviate insurance costs. But the fundamental constraint here, and we've sent out over 400 applications, taking folks off the wait list and moving 400 applications thus far, but the fundamental constraint remains contractor capacity. And that's why over the past months, we've really been focusing on contractor recruitment. We had a great session with SLACO on June 4th, and we will be putting out a new RFQ. Mission St. Louis has a bench of contractors, but we'll be putting out a new RFQ for some of these master bids later this summer. With respect to SLDC and the Small Business Grant Program, we have received over 900, nearly 1,000 applications, and are in the process of reviewing these for these $5,000 grants for small businesses. We are sending out the first batch of over 100 awards this week, but allow me to clarify that that's 100 agreements that then need to be signed by the small business and then invoiced and routed through the comptroller's office for disbursement of funds. But we have received 900 of those and are moving 100 this week with more to come. With respect to the Small Business and Nonprofit Revolving Loan Fund, the goal there is really to support community-driven development, neighborhood associations and others, and support with site assembly and other needs. And that subrecipient agreement is still being finalized with CDA. With respect to the Technical Assistance Hub, programming around the Economic Empowerment Center has already begun. We've got an event with the Black Chamber of Commerce and MasterCard next week essentially providing financial literacy services and digital literacy services. And there will be a lot more to come there as we open up that center in Sumner or alongside Sumner. On workforce development, SLDC has hired a workforce development lead that has already started. And on the Housing Development Fund, this is really broken out into 3 programs: a $10 million revolving loan fund, which is being leveraged with new market tax credits, the RFP for a construction manager for these single family homes went out, I believe 2 weeks ago. The second program is $4 million, which is being allocated towards the production of affordable housing, specifically at a rate of 30% area median income. So that's affordable to extremely low income families. That NOFA, that Notice of Funding Availability went out on Friday. And SLDC is holding an informational session with developers of affordable housing on Thursday. And we're excited to see the applications and hope to generate and produce a substantial number of units there and leverage these units as well with LIHTC and other funds. And then finally, there's a $4 million allocation, which is supplementing Prop NS. Stabilization and rehab of LRA homes. LRA has over 1,000 homes in their inventory. And even though Prop NS is by ordinance approved by the voters, capped at $30,000 per single family home and $50,000 per multifamily home, especially with the recent spike in construction costs, we're seeing these stabilization projects cost upwards of $100,000. And so it's just not enough. And these funds will help supplement that and transform vacant LRA properties into affordable housing. With respect to SLATE, the best way to think about these funds is to take those first 3 bullets and merge them into a single $3 million item. That $3 million item has been programmed fully with $1.6 million committed to the St. Louis Public Schools for a Learn and Earn program, which they are running in collaboration with St. Louis Youth Jobs. That Learn and Earn program funded 368 youth jobs this past spring. And the city transferred over $560,000 to support that program. Additionally, we are working with SLPS and St. Louis Youth Jobs to plan a full year-round youth jobs program that will run through the SLPS calendar year 22 to 23. So from September 22 to June 23. In addition to that 1.6 million, another 1.1 million of these funds has been allocated to EDSI to run another youth jobs program focused on jobs in city government and providing additional capacity. And then finally, another $300,000 has been allocated for SLATE administrative costs. The remaining 3 items are all in various stages of RFP drafting, issuance, and review. And we're especially excited that child support arrears, we will be able to match these funds potentially with a $950,000 appropriation of ARPA funds by the state for a similar purpose. Finally, with respect to the Planning and Urban Design Agency, neighborhood planning is set to commence after Labor Day on a variety of neighborhoods in North St. Louis that have been approved by the Planning Commission. And in order to support that, this $1 million will cover 4 to 5 planners, as well as a stable of consultants that will help conduct community engagement. Those consultants have been selected. We ran an RFQ, and the selected consultants included 6 local companies: PGAB, the Public Design Bureau, RISE, the I-5 Group, Shockey Consulting Group, and MWR Consulting, as well as an out-of-town group from Vancouver called Happy City that we were impressed by. And that's it for the development agencies. So I'll pause there for any questions.
Thanks, Noel. Very helpful. Let's run down the list. I know Alderman Cohn had to jump. Alderwoman Boyd.
I really have no questions. I mean, I have no questions.
Okay. Alderman Narayan.
No questions. Thank you for your work on this.
Alderwoman Evans.
I think she had to leave.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Chairwoman Davis.
I don't really have any questions. A lot of this is still moving, and I understand the frustration and talking about things that have been in chronic state for a long period of time. And so we're all anxious to see funds being spent. But for me, I appreciate the time that is being taken to make sure that it's spent properly. And the evaluation process is what we're going to talk about later on, because I need to see, and the public needs to see, how we're evaluating people that we have given contracts to. So I'm okay. And the only one that I had a little bit of concern about was I didn't hear enough about minority participation, because when we talk about we need to look for entities to issue larger contracts to, you have associations where all these different contractors, they have their MBWBE, they're members of it. If we issue information to them about what it is we need done, first of all, the majority of them live in the city, the businesses are in the city, and they can work together because they know each other. And we can get some faster turnarounds and completion of work. So that's just something to think about. Thank you.
100% agreed, Alderwoman Davis. Neil and I had a really great conversation with a couple of partners in the space about this yesterday. And one of the things that we were talking about that we got pretty excited about, maybe I shouldn't be talking about it just yet, but a sheltered market program where essentially when we look at home repair, when we look at building stabilization, when we look at maintaining our vacant lots, we can set aside a portion of that for MWB contractors and really make this an opportunity to expand the number of MWB contractors and businesses in the city of St. Louis and grow these businesses.
Well, that sounds like what needs to be done. So at least we're talking about it, and hopefully we can implement it, because our city, first of all, the appearance of a city when people visit it is really critical. Because those of us who have been here for a long time, we're almost numb. We now believe that it's okay that when I drive down the street, I smell urine, I look at vacant lots that have grass grown and or debris dumped. But for people who come into our city, we just really don't want it to look like that, okay? So I'm hopeful that those conversations will be fruitful. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, I want just a comment from me, and I appreciate this update. This is very informative, and you guys sent around a spreadsheet, I know, to the committee members, a 14-page document that's got a lot of great information, sort of tracking what's been allocated, what's been spent, who's received the awards. Is that publicly available, or is that? I mean, I don't know if you put it together for us, or if that's your tracking document. Does the public have access to this?
First of all, we consider it a public document, and it reflects the same information that's included in the transparency portal.
Okay. And that leads to my next comment. So the transparency portal, and this is just a general statement, because I'm like, I got an email about this from a constituent the other day, because I always try to tell people, hey, you can track all this. Is all being tracked online. You can see it on the city's website, because I do get a lot of questions about, how's this money being spent? What's going on? I'm on the city's webpage, And I mean, I consider myself fairly tech savvy, and I'm clicking around. I can't find a transparency portal. I know it exists. If I Google it, I find it. But I just think that's something it's this important that we need to make it a little easier for folks to locate that are interested in tracking this spending. So I don't know who can handle getting that done, but that would be my request.
Yeah, I've had that very same experience, Alderman Coder, of just like being unable to find it and just sending an email to ITSA to send me the link because it's hard to find. But the place you find it is the American Rescue Plan Act funding report. It is the overall section title, and it's within COVID-19 recovery. And then you scroll down, and about halfway down the page or a third of the way down the page is the transparency portal. But it's a point well taken, and we can work with ITSA to put that in a more.
Oh, here it is. Okay, I see it. Yeah, I mean, can we just, this in particular, I mean, this is something people are really taking an interest in, and I just think we got to make this a little easier for folks to find. But I'll defer to you and IT on that front. Okay, what do you guys have next?
Next actually is, okay, I thought it was going to be ITSA, but that's one after. I'll turn it back over to Grace to discuss Parks, Recreation, and Forestry.
Yep. Just let me pull back up my notes. So I'll be quick here. Parks, Recreation, Forestry, it continues to move along. For Learning Labs, they are, sorry, just got a call. So most of these funds are being allocated through the purchase of computers, tablets, printers, and other software and equipment necessary to set up these learning labs at the different rec centers. Up to 192,000 of these funds are being allocated through an RFP seeking providers to manage learning labs and provide computer skills and training. For nothing but nets, the youth basketball leagues are being run by the city staff at Twalton Park, Tandy and Mole. And then there'll be a youth basketball league as well for behavioral health recreation programming. I will be following up with Recreation to learn better of how this is going, but the selection committee, last I heard, we're doing interviews to be able to select the vendors there. And then the New Dimension soccer program that had a contract that is expiring later this year, and the ARPA funds will be used to extend it.
Thanks, Grace. Should I take us forward to ITSA, or do we want to pause for questions there?
No, let's keep going. Go ahead, Noel.
Great. So for ITSA, there's just two items. The high-speed Wi-Fi, about $40,000 has been spent, and that wiring has been put into recreation centers. What we're waiting on, and the remaining 60,000 is the devices. So there's a supply chain issue there, but that's what we're waiting on. On the data analytics and software, ITSA is planning to transfer a portion or perhaps all of those funds to SLDC to bring on a data analytics manager, a data a research analyst, and a data analyst. Then these would be under the CTO, our Chief Technology Officer, and provide us with data analytics capacity as we're tracking all this data. And there may be some software needs as well. With respect to the Board of Public Service, we have allocated $250,000 to establish an equitable microtransit service downtown that stretches essentially from Market Street and from City Hall all the way up to Preservation Square and all the way up a little bit further still to the near north side, Carr and Columbus Square. They have been providing over 200 rides a week now. They've been running for over 10 weeks and has been pretty successful. You can get rides through hailing the van on the street, by calling or on an app, and wait times are consistently below 10 minutes. So that kind of pilot project has been a success as far as we can tell thus far, and welcome any other comments on that. Intentional encampments, really following the lead of the Department of Human Services as they work to identify a site, but those funds are available should the need arise. And then with respect to expanding broadband and public Wi-Fi, about $500,000 of that appropriation is being bidded out in an RFP, whereas the remaining $1 million is being reserved for implementation. That RFP is essentially to conduct an assessment of the city's fiber infrastructure. Ernst & Young did a really interesting study, which essentially charted a 3-pronged strategy to improve digital equity in St. Louis. This included investments in broadband infrastructure, which they assess we need at least $50 to $60 million worth of investments to fill in the gaps in the city's fiber grid, as well as, so that's one prong, in broadband infrastructure. The second prong is devices, and the third prong is affordable service, so essentially subsidized service. In order to tackle that first prong of broadband infrastructure, the first order question that we need to assess as a city is whether we are building off of the city's fiber network or building off of privately owned fiber networks. So this $500,000 will be spent on assessing the capacity of the city's fiber network and also developing a broader digital equity strategy. And the remaining $1 million will be spent for implementation. Although it's almost certain that additional funds will be needed there. And then on the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, we just had Nicole Barden, the Executive Director of the CJCC, start this week. We're excited to have her back in city government. She formerly led the Civilian Oversight Board, and she will really drive the implementation for the remainder of these funds. Finally, with respect to the Board of Elections, the Board of Elections has authorized the purchase of ballot on demand units. These are essentially ballot printing machines, but this is only worth about probably $100,000 to $150,000 of the overall allocation. The bulk of the money is still reserved for election machines. They've conducted an RFP to select these election machines. They've received, I think, 4 responses and have been evaluating these. Although frankly, with the number of elections coming up in the near future, implementation and actually substituting in these new election machines may need to hold until next year. But they are looking to buy around 200 tabulators as well as ADA accessible machines and election management software. And then I'll turn it over to Jared to discuss the police department's allocation and to close us out on Board Bill 2. Oh, or should I pause for questions?
No, let's go ahead. Let's just keep going.
Sure. Board Bill 2 originally appropriated $5 million for uniformed police overtime. Subsequently, that appropriation was modified by subsequent board bill, which took half of that and dedicated it to the Real-Time Crime Center for cameras. Thus far, we're still tracking overtime, and the year is not done. So we don't know if the police department will be tapping into that overtime fund based upon where their budget lands. With respect to the Real-Time Crime Center and the cameras that are part of that center, it's been a really interesting exercise to go through the cameras that have been acquired by various older people, businesses, and learn kind of how they are used, but more importantly, kind of how balkanized our camera system is in the city. We discovered that approximately a third of both the cameras and LPRs that are used by our law enforcement are down for a variety of reasons, whether it's someone has a traffic accident and hits a camera that's on a traffic signal. That the cameras don't really, or they have a short useful life. So our CTO has convened the streets department, who has plays some role in with installing some of these cameras. It's and the police department, and it's come up with a plan to spend about 2.2 million of the 2.5 million in both repairing the damaged cameras. Like I said, about a third of the cameras that we have are damaged and not working, and a third of the LPRs are not working. But also to provide some critical infrastructure, fiber infrastructure, to make sure that the system that the cameras run on is strong and sufficient. So in addition to utilizing this money, also looking to kind of create a group of city employees that is responsible and streamlines this process. Because like I said, these cameras involve several different departments when they are acquired. So trying to both utilize the money effectively and streamline the process that we are maintaining. We're kind of servicing and maintaining these cameras. So with that, those are the two appropriations for the police department.
Okay, let's run through questions real fast, see if anybody has any. Alderwoman Boyd.
Okay, my question is, I keep hearing you all talk about North Corridor, that like this transportation is north, and it's not north. Let's be honest about this whole situation. That's downtown. So I don't know if you all know where the North Corridor is or where it starts, but that's not north that you all are servicing. That's downtown area. And so again, I don't see anything for the North Corridor. And so I'm asking you all, if you all could please bring me clarity on how the North Corridor is benefiting from these dollars. Because in regards to the healthy home piece, the transportation piece, the internet piece, I don't see it. So maybe I'm missing something. I must be missing something in this whole presentation. So maybe somebody can explain. Maybe Noel, he seems to have those answers. So maybe he can give me those answers.
Sure. First of all, I think you're right. The microtransit pilot is certainly focused downtown. It does go up to the near north side, but I know that that's not necessarily where the bulk of the need is, although Preservation Square does have, and that zip code 63106 does have the lowest median income in the city and the lowest life expectancy rates in the city. But you're right that each of these pieces, especially the Wi-Fi piece, that's a long-term investment that ultimately, when we look at the broadband that needs to be filled in, that is predominantly in North St. Louis. That's something the Ernst & Young study did find, but we need this study to make those investments. With respect to the funding that's being allocated directly to North St. Louis, we are going to be talking a little bit later in this presentation about Board Bill 82 and that $37 million and the status of that project. But in addition, a lot of the funding in CDA and SLDC is designed to go towards North St. Louis. In the home repair program, those 400 homes that we've taken off the waiting list, I understand, and you are right, that not enough work has actually gotten done as a result of the contractor shortage, but the majority of those homes are in North St. Louis. And the same is true when we look at the Housing Development Fund and the single family homes that we're looking to construct. We are focused on qualified census tracts, the majority of which are in North St. Louis. So I hear you that the impact hasn't been felt yet. And I think that's absolutely true. It's what we see. We're going to be talking a little bit later on about our survey, and that's what we see in our survey, that residents want change that they can see and feel. So I agree that we're not necessarily, we need to move faster. The need is urgent. And at the end of the day, only about, while a lot of these funds have been programmed, more than 10 million and probably more than the 13 million that show up on our accounts have been spent, but it's not transformative at this point, and that's what we need.
And so all I'm asking is, again, is our community needs some sign of hope. And right now, they don't feel like it's no hope. It's nothing happening to help them. So it's no services leading this way. It's no programs leading this way. the little organizations that's out here, they're struggling, trying to make sure they service the people the best they can because they don't have the dollars the other organizations do. And so I'm sorry, but I'm just frustrated today because I feel like this community is left intentionally. And I keep hearing people say, just wait. We can't wait. We don't have time to wait anymore. We've waited for 20 years. Why do we have to keep waiting? We need to be having something coming our way, and people need to pay attention to what's going on. And so, again, like I said, I apologize because I'm frustrated. You don't look in people's faces and see where they say that they make calls to the city departments and nothing happens, or they apply for loans and nothing happens, or grants through the CDA. And so I'm the one that's hearing that. I'm the one that's hearing about the services not being done. I'm the one that's hearing about the programs not in our community. So again, I apologize because, people say I wear my heart on my sleeve, but I wear my heart because I'm looking in these people's faces and I'm living and breathing it every day. And so it's not where it's something I can go in Chesterfield and close it out. When I go home, I hear the same noise and the gunshots and the fireworks as all other people are hearing. So I'm just asking you all, one, quit putting downtown as North St. Louis, because that is not North St. Louis. And two, give my people some hope, because all this is good on paper, but I don't see it in our communities. And I'm sorry, I don't see it. And so somebody has to help me to understand where is it at and when are we going to get it?
There's no need to apologize, Alderwoman Boyd. I hear you and I agree with you. The challenge with these funds is that they do require real capacity to administer in terms of monitoring, in terms of reporting. And so if there are these smaller organizations in your ward or across the city that could benefit from these funds, please connect us to them, because we want to work with them to see how they might be able to administer and use these funds. But the other thing I'll say, we're on this page, administrative offices, and I think it jumps out compared to the funds that we were talking about prior in the presentation, 60 million to development, 40 million to human services, et cetera, that there have not been sufficient. We need funding for the city councilor's office to help us run these procurement processes and draft these contracts and support these smaller organizations in their reporting and monitoring. We need funding for SEMA, that's directly conducting the reporting to Treasury and is severely understaffed. And we need funding, frankly, I'll say it, for our office and the comptroller's office to move these programs more quickly. So I agree with you that we need to move faster.
I will add to that, with respect to a resource guide, we have a resource guide that we're happy to provide you all or anyone else that talks about the programs that are available through ARPA. Additionally, if there are small organizations that you think could benefit from some of the programs in terms of being a vendor, we have identified and secured a consultant that is helping smaller organizations prepare their responses to some of these competitive processes. So they played a vital role in helping several of the smaller organizations apply for the CVI dollars, and they are available for other opportunities that target community groups. So we're happy, like I said, to provide you with the resource guide, and also if there are opportunities for small community groups to apply for funding, we're happy to connect you with this consultant / organization that helps small groups provide or put together responses and proposals.
Thank you. Anything else, Alderwoman?
No.
Okay.
I think I've
Alderman-
done enough.
Thank you. Alderman Orion.
No questions, Mr. Vice Chair. Thank you.
Okay, Chairwoman Davis.
No questions. Thank you.
All right. Gentlemen, go ahead.
Yes, small amount of funds for, and Noel, I don't know, are you covering this?
I thought you were, but happy to cover it.
Sure. Small amount of funds for kind of the administration and oversight of the $135 million. As Noel mentioned earlier, this request or to truthfully kind of administer these funds, it's been, I guess the initial appropriation request to administer the funds was reduced. So we have done what we can with what we have. With respect to auditing and accounting, those are situated in the comptroller's office. As these are federal funds, we have a high degree of reporting that goes into kind of the tracking and monitoring of these funds and the reporting of such funds. So let's see. I think that's about all.
I'll just mention on legal services that we have entered into a contract with Armstrong Teasdale that's helping us answer some questions that we've been struggling with as we move through implementation, both with respect to eligible uses and with respect to monitoring and reporting responsibilities.
Yep, small amount of money for consultation services. You've seen the transparency portal. We have translation services that are available through the International Institute on small marketing communications budget. SEMA is the lead organization in terms of reporting and monitoring, in terms of submitting our reports to the Treasury Department, federal government. So they have a small amount of money that goes with all of those responsibilities and duties. And with that, we're gonna, if there are no questions, turn it over to Rich Bradley to talk about the infrastructure package.
Thanks, Jared. Good afternoon, Mr. Vice Chair, Madam Chair, committee members. Board Bill 184, Ordinance 71497, contained $69.58 million in ARPA funding that was approved in early May. Just to give you a rundown on where we are with this very briefly. Prior to the signing of the ordinance, we had been working with the City Councilor's office to develop and ensure that all the requirements for ARPA funded projects were ready to go when the projects were ready to be put out. As I said, we're just getting started immediately after the ordinance was signed. The very first step is to request funding accounts from the Comptroller's office. I think this was mentioned previously. I don't want to beat a dead dog, and I want to do this very respectfully, that the new accounting system that the Comptroller's office is working with has delayed a number of items. So we just received, after about 5 weeks of requesting accounts for these projects. Each project needs an account set up for it in order for us to proceed. So with the ARPA projects, the very first thing that we've done with them is we have, assigned them their accounting numbers, determine the proper procurement methods for each project under each category. Just to remind you, the categories were streets, bridges, parks, recreation, and forestry, fire department, buildings and equipment, police department, buildings and equipment, corrections and other public safety, other municipal buildings and equipment, and city vehicles, non-fire and non-police. And these again are all capital improvements expenditures. And so when I talk about procurement methods, some of the things that we're considering is existing contracts. I think everyone is aware here that the City Justice Center $20 million project is and has been underway for a year and a half. And there is a substantial amount of ARPA funding, the amount of about $4.750 million for that project. So that's an example of an existing contract where we would program ARPA funds into, and we have, and we're currently utilizing them. Then we would look at emergency type contracts where there's situations of dangerous or public safety situations for bridge repairs, building repairs, or other things of that nature where we could utilize an emergency contract to go out for bid, be very transparent with it, but expedite the process as opposed to a traditional board letting. And then finally, looked at board lettings to go out to the general public, the general bidding community for all the rest of the projects. While we're doing this, we're working with the city departments that they touch. We've assigned project managers to each of the projects, and we're reviewing the scope of each of the projects and the budget. And I do want to make just a quick note here. It's important to understand that these budgets were put together over a year ago. And I think everyone on this call would realize that the supply chain, the cost of materials, the cost of labor, everything has increased dramatically. And so we're working through these to figure out how much we can get with the budgets that we have for each item and still get the final impact that we're looking for. For example, the vehicle specifications, this is a great example of it. There are city vehicles, police vehicles, fire department apparatus, and ambulances. And so the specifications for each one of those vehicle types, it gets assembled. Then after it's assembled and reviewed by the Department of Equipment Services in each division of that operating department, and they sign off on it, we will put a requisition in, it will go to the supply commissioner, and it will go out for a public bid. Vehicles right now have a long lead time. For example, we could be looking up to 18 months for an ambulance. We could be looking up to almost 2 years for a trash truck. So we're doing our best to figure out what will work for us in the long term, what we can get as quickly as possible, but in the same token, we want quality. Keep in mind that while we have had this windfall of ARPA funds for capital, so have every other city in the country. So when we go to manufacturers, they are getting bombarded by everyone to get things out as quickly as possible. The same thing goes for lead time on equipment. We're doing our best to try to get equipment ordered that we can, because equipment such as air handlers, elevators, things of that nature, the lead times right now are just astronomical. I do want to touch real briefly on a couple of items here that were mentioned, because I think it's worth explaining. Chairwoman Davis, I do want to assure you that Ordinance 70767 for M and WBE participation will be included in all of our projects. And we will be extremely critical about making sure that we meet and exceed the requirements for those, because this is a one-time opportunity, and we want to make sure that we are very inclusive on that. As far as an equitable implementation strategy goes, for projects that, particularly like street paving, where we are going to have to do some curb work or ADA ramps or things simply beyond just paving the streets, and with the cost of gasoline being over $5 a gallon and asphalt being a petroleum product, our strategy will be to start at the north terminus of all of these projects and work our way towards the south. That way, if it comes to a situation where there is not sufficient funds to meet from limit to limit, we have made a diligent effort to, show our citizens in North City that they are important to us. We do care about them, and they are going to be first on the list to, get the work done before anybody else does. And then leveraging funds for maximum input. What I will say about that is, there are other sources of funds out there right now, such as $50 million general obligation bond. There's another tranche of ARPA that came in, as Jared mentioned. There's settlement money from the Rams, as well as there are a number of grant opportunities that we are going to look at when we're going through this and see how we can utilize the funds we have within either match shares or match ups, such as the police department foundation grant here. We put $150,000 in, and the police department, police foundation put $1 million towards renovating the 3 superstations. We're looking for those opportunities every day in order to stretch our dollars, get more things done, get more bang for our buck. And I think just about all of you on the call know me, and you know that if there's a way to stretch the money, that I'm going to do that and be as inclusive of anybody and everybody in our city that I can, because again, this is a one-time opportunity. So I think that's a very general synopsis. And if I can answer any questions, specific or whatever, I'll be glad to attempt it.
Thank you, Rich. Let's run through the committee, see if anyone's got questions on infrastructure. Alderwoman Boyd.
No questions. Thank you, Rich.
Alderman Narayan.
No questions. Thank you.
Okay. Alderwoman, I think Alderwoman Evans left. Chairwoman Davis.
Well, I don't have any questions. I just want to commend you in your thought process for how you're going to be operating. When you start where the major problems are and executing, you are absolutely right that people will have more faith in the government system, and most especially the support to the government system. You see, we can talk about things and we can pass bills, but if nobody in the city is happy with us and or half of the city is unhappy, you're not going to get a lot accomplished, because you're going to always spend more time on trying to either explain something and or put out fires. So thank you for that thought process.
Okay, great. All right, and then I think what we're going to do is give Noel or somebody a quick chance to talk about, I guess it was Board Bill 82. Noel, is that the
That's
ADA?
right.
Okay, if we could briefly cover that, and then we're going to save this discussion of the survey responses for a future meeting. I mean, we've lost some members of the committee, and I want to make sure we have I want to work with the chairwoman and make sure we're having a good discussion and lots of committee input on that point. So we'll wait on the survey, and we'll do that at a future meeting. We'll coordinate everyone's schedules there. But Noel, why don't you still give us a quick overview of what's going on with, I guess it was Board Bill 82 with the North Side, grant zones and some ADA funding.
Sounds great, and I'll be quick. I'll just start by saying the board bill required us to execute a subrecipient agreement within, I believe it's a week or two of the bill going into effect, and to get applications for funding out by June 1st. And we have complied with those requirements. CDA and SLDC entered into a subrecipient agreement on the 13th. And the first round of applications for this $37 million in funding went out on June 1st. The eligible geography is shown here on the right. It's a somewhat idiosyncratic, strange geography, and that's really based on what's in the bill, which essentially says that it's eligible geographies are these corridors and any neighborhoods, including a portion of the corridors, which are in qualified census tracts. We're trying to fix a little issue around the south side of the Delmar West corridor, which is not in a qualified census tract, and may need the board's help cleaning that up and designating the south side of the Delmar West corridor as a disproportionately impacted geography. But we're getting some legal guidance there, and may be able to do it internally at SLDC and CDA as well. The eligible uses are really broken out into two buckets, and these correspond to the two applications that we're putting out. The first one is operating expenses, payroll, rent, mortgage, et cetera. And those are the stabilization and expansion grants. But we also know the need for change you can see and feel is extraordinary, which is why we also included facade grants in that first application that went out on June 1st. We've only received a few applications thus far. We think people are taking their time to pull together their projects and look forward to reviewing once we have more in. And then we'll also be putting out a second application for what the bill calls community enhancement grants, that are essentially commercial rehab and other rehab projects to meet community needs as well, and larger brick and mortar projects. And we'll be putting out that second application this summer. But again, have only received a few applications for those stabilization, expansion, and facade grants to date. And would just really encourage everyone on this call to reach out to organizations, nonprofits, businesses, et cetera, that could use some support, both on the corridor and in this pink geography. And then I'll just hit ADA compliance real quick. You can see a map put together by our office on the disabled on the right there. These are the priority projects that we are planning to fund with this $2 million. And looking for an implementation timeline of 2022 and 2023. But really focusing here on senior centers, on some other city facilities, on parks and rec centers, et cetera. And we know the need is extraordinary. So we're focused, this $2 million is going to help us bring some city buildings up to spec and make them ADA compliant. But the truth is that sidewalks across the city need to be upgraded, and that's going to cost tens of millions of dollars. And that's it.
Thanks, Noel. Quickly, any questions, members of the committee? Alderwoman Boyd?
No, sir. I'm sorry.
All right. Alderman Ryan?
No questions. Thank you.
Chairwoman Davis?
No questions, thank you.
Okay, I don't have any. I really want to thank you all for doing this. I know it's a lot of work to put this together. It's important. You know, we all get asked about, you know, how this money's being spent, where it's being spent. People are anxious to see it put to work. You know, obviously, members of the committee are as well. And with that, I think Noel, Jared, Grace, unless you have any closing comments you want to give, like I said, we're going to save the community engagement piece for a future meeting when we've got more members of the committee here. But I'll give you guys the final word if you have any closing thoughts.
Sure. Thank you for everyone's time today. And many of the programs that we spoke about have been, I think, or are getting underway, but we certainly could use your help in publicizing a lot of these wonderful opportunities. I will make sure Kevin Bailey not only gets you resource guides, but will go wherever you direct him to go with such resource guides, because there are some wonderful opportunities that are funded with this once in a lifetime infusion of federal dollars. So thank you, and we look forward to working with you to get the word out for some of these incredible programs.
Thank you, Mr. Boyd. All right, with that, do we have any announcements from members of the committee? Okay, hearing none, we're going to go ahead and adjourn the Housing, Urban Development, and Zoning Committee for June 22nd, 2022.
Let's excuse those aldermen.
Oh, we should excuse. Good call. Good call, Alderwoman or Chairwoman. So we will excuse. We were briefly all here. I guess the alderman, everybody was present at some point.
At some point. Okay, good.
So we were all here. We're a small committee right now.
Okay.
All right. With that, thank you, everybody, for your time. Everyone have a wonderful day.
Thanks all.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.